Alright, let's see if I can be heard. Let's see if I can be heard. Let's see if... Alright, it seems like I can. It doesn't sound that great. Seems like I can. It doesn't sound that great. Doesn't sound that great. I think it's just like looping. Can't find my headphones. I don't know what I did with them. They've got to be somewhere. I don't think I lost them. Unless they're in the truck. Nah. Anyways, good evening, everybody. I hope you are having a wonderful week. I've had an adventurous week myself. Traveling to a new state, working in a completely new region, dealing with humidity. I'm used to 0% humidity almost. Now I'm dealing with nearly 90% humidity, and it's not fun. I don't know how people do it. I really don't. It sucks. It really does. It sucks. You get so hot. It's only like 80 degrees. Well, it's like 88. It's almost 90. It's supposed to jump up to like 95. And I already feel like I'm dying working outside. Like, it's just sweat. So much sweat. Your shirt is drenched. Why live here? I mean, I know why people moved here, but still, it sucks. Give me the dry desert any day. Or a cool, temperate place. I could do that. It's just when it's hot and humid. Cold and humid, I'm good with that. It's good. Dry and hot, that's good. Dry and cold, I can do that. Really gotta moisturize with that, but yeah. And then, so, dealing with a new place, dealing with the weather, all new stuff, exciting. Just out here digging holes. Yep. That's all I'm doing, digging holes. Haven't found anything yet. Maybe we will. We'll see. Anyways, we should probably get started on the actual news. Like I said, been adventurous, new place, same work. Got a truck stuck. I didn't, but I tried to help get it unstuck. It was one of the work trucks. Hey Drewski, how's it going? I'm just talking about trying to get his truck unstuck. Because it got stuck in the sand, and we could not get it out. Eventually, a guy had to come help us. So, that was fun. Tried for about an hour and a half to dig the stupid thing out, and didn't work. Oh well. These things happen when you're out on two-track roads, and you're given a vehicle without four-wheel drive, so. Okay, let's get started in here. Let's get it started in, huh? Alright. First article. Why is this ad so big? Go, oh, there we go. Oops, nope, not what I wanted. Not what I wanted. You're hearing echoes. How do I fix echoes? Maybe it's this. Is that better? Can you hear? Is it still going with echoes? Oh man, it's still going with echoes. Let's see. How about that and get rid of that. Better. Okay. Hopefully that one works. It's usually a little bit of a lag when I fix something. and when you see it or hear it in this case because the screen's black. Hopefully that's gone now. Okay. What is this? Go away, ad. Okay. How artificial intelligence is making 2,000-year-old scrolls readable again. This is the type of stuff that makes me so excited about artificial intelligence. I know there's a lot of apprehension, a lot of sci-fi movies that have gone on in the past how many decades about the fears we have for artificial intelligence. So, when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, it covered the ancient cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum under tons of ash. Millennia later, in the mid-18th century, archaeologists began to unearth the city, including its famed libraries, but the scrolls they found were too fragile to be unrolled and read. Their contents were thought to be lost forever. Only now, thanks to the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning, scholars of the ancient world have partnered with computer programmers to unlock the contents of these priceless documents. In this episode of There's More to That, science journalist and Smithsonian contributor Joe Marchant tells us about the years-long campaign to read these scrolls and Yusef Nader, one of the 3 winners of last year's Vesuvius Challenge, to make these clumps of vulcanized ash readable. A transcript is below. To subscribe to There's More Than That, blah 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 blah. Oh, okay. So let's see. Nader introduces himself as a PhD student. Spending time in Berlin, visiting family in Egypt. Okay, wow, this is talking about Nader. Okay, I don't really care about your personal. Let's see. So they're a collection of carbonized papyrus scrolls from around 2,000 years ago, uh, buried by the volcano. They're described as the only intact library we have that survives from the ancient world. Because they were buried by the volcano, you've got these carbonized scrolls that were kept underground for all that time, so they have survived. But the only problem is can't unwrap them to read them without destroying them. So they've been this big archaeological mystery since they were discovered in the 18th century. Some of them have been pulled apart and are basically crumbled into dust, and they're in hundreds of pieces, but there are a few hundred, the worst, most charred cases, if you like, that were left intact as a lost cause. They've been described as saggy brown burritos, is one of the least rude descriptions I've heard. They've kind of crumpled, crushed, wrinkled, they look like nothing. They were thought supposedly to have been pieces of coal by the workmen who first uncovered them in the 18th century, so they just really look like very sorry objects indeed. Okay, but what does they say? What do they say, not does they say? The library itself was situated in the luxury Roman villa on the shore of the Bay of Naples. It has possibly belonged to Julius Caesar's father-in-law at one point. This beautiful villa with walkways, columns, statues, works of art, courtyards, this luxury residence. The workmen are digging tunnels essentially through the site, uncovering it, find these lumps. Initially, just think that they're coal, burn them, throw them away. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly how it was first realized that that was not what these things were, that they were actually incredibly precious. But once that was realized, then there was incredible interest in trying to read them. Sorry, just seeing if there's any. Uh, talking about how incredible it is. It's a big challenge. Attempts to open them, can't. Uh, there's jigsaw for the ones that's broken. A lot of ink from ancient papyrus has got iron in it, so if you X-ray that ink, will glow very brightly. But the problem with this ink is it's just carbon and water. It is exactly the same density in X-ray scans as the papyrus. So you can do your X-rays, you can do beautiful 3D scanning, whatever you're going to do, but it's like doing an X-ray of a body. You're looking for the bones, but the bones are completely transparent. The ink doesn't show up. Okay, quite unusual person. One of the first things that Brent Seals worked on was a very old copy of Beowulf in Old English that was kept in the British Library. So taking photographs of old manuscripts is difficult. They're warped and folded. They're not flat, so photographs don't really work. So they've developed software where they can scan the three-dimensional surface and then flatten it out so that you have a nice flat surface. You could read all the writing. Okay. So when they took CT scans, they were able to virtually unwrap the surface and see written inside was actually some text from the book of Leviticus. Ah. Then in 2005, a colleague showed Brent Seals the Herculaneum scrolls. Oh, wait. Okay, so scrolls from the Dead Sea, they successfully did it. Then they move on to these scrolls from Herculaneum. The scale of the challenge, the potential for the information that you could find, but he's quite interesting in that he isn't so interested specifically in some of these ancient Greek and Roman sources that most papyrologists, I guess it makes sense there would be someone who just studies papyrus. He's actually a devout Christian. He is really interested in the origins of Christianity. The volcano erupted in 79 AD. These scrolls were buried, so this was the time when Christianity was just beginning, and the philosophers in ancient Greece and Rome and the world would have been very aware of what was happening, probably interested in this new religion that was starting up. But he told me that what he was really dreaming of, really interested in, is finding out more information about that. Can we find information from early Christian sources? That would be really cool. That would be, but they're probably like ledgers of some sort. There's a huge technical challenges, but one of the biggest problems he's actually had is getting access to the scrolls to even study them and to try to develop these techniques. Because they're incredibly precious and incredibly fragile, so curators who are in charge of these collections, the last thing they want to do is give them to some computer scientist who wants to carry them off to a particle accelerator somewhere and send beams of X-rays through them. This is something that's taken nearly 20 years to really come together. Can I borrow this irreplaceable treasure of yours? I'll bring it back right back. I just need to run it through a particle accelerator first. Uh, so they were taken to the particle accelerator, gotten 3D scans of them. Um, they went slice by slice to kind of mark where all the surfaces are. If you think about looking at one of these scrolls in a cross section, you'll see a spiral of where the papyrus is all wound together, and you have to mark where all those surfaces are. And then what Brent Seals and his team did was work on software for algorithms that could take that data and then unwrap that spiral into a flat surfaces so you could get a kind of flat image of what that surface looks like in the CT scan. And then maybe look for the ink. So as previously mentioned, the ink is transparent when x-rayed because it just comes up the same as the papyrus. So you're actually going to make the ink visible. They had one tiny fragment which had one letter on it. sigma, and they were able to carry that to the diamond light source in Oxfordshire. And the idea was that just using that one letter, they were trying to come up with imaging techniques. And that's where a few years ago they had the idea of using machine learning, these artificial intelligence techniques to try to do that. If you take some of the papyri that has been opened, some of these fragments, and you train your machine learning algorithm, you show it this is what ink looks like, and this is what not ink, just the blank papyrus looks like. You can teach it to be able to tell the difference. So then you can run that same algorithm on your CT scans, and inside the wrapped up scroll, that was the approach. But they realized that this was going to be an incredibly labor intensive, a lot of work to do this. And I think that's the point at which Nat Friedman, the Silicon Valley entrepreneur who had heard about the Herculaneum scrolls and contacted Brent Seals to say, right, what's happening with this? Is there anything that I can do to help? And that was the origins of this Vesuvius Challenge competition. Um, So different worlds come together. You've got the computer scientists, you've got these classicists and papyrologists who have their own culture and world. You've got the curators. They're just really wanting to keep everything safe. They're conservators. So very different motives, very different cultures that these people are coming from. If you think of papyrologists, after it will take them years, decades to do a translation and edit and edition of a particular source. They're so painstaking. They're working character by character, just trying to work everything out. And then you've got the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs coming in. Speed is everything. Okay. I just want to know what it said. Okay. Does it say? Talking about people. Does it say? Put everything out there, made it public, launched the award toward the beginning of 2023, and it all went from there. I think they had more than 1,000 teams in the end from all over the world, and they were all on this Discord, the chat platform for gamers, discussing latest advances and questions because they were just releasing little flat images of the surfaces inside these scrolls, a little piece at a time. And then with the entrance of the Vesuvius challenge we're doing was then they would take those segments, those flat segments, and use those to then train their machine learning models to try and recognize that ink. A lot of teams trying different things, trying to train their algorithms in different ways. So one thing that Seals thought they might be able to do was to train the algorithm on the letters from the parts of the scrolls that have been read, but that ended up really not working very well. It seems that you have to train your algorithm on the same scroll of the scans that you're trying to read. Because you can't see the ink, it's obviously difficult. One of the first real key breakthroughs was an ex-physicist called Casey Handmer. He was actually looking at the images that were coming out from inside the scroll visually and just spending hours and hours poring over them. He was convinced that if a machine learning algorithm could see a difference, a lot of those are trained based on the human visual system. So he was thinking if a machine can see it, it must be possible for a human to see it, if we just look carefully enough. So he started poring over the images and eventually noticed this very strange, very subtle difference in texture. So normally in the CT scans, you can sort of see the woven strands of the papyrus. And then in some places, there was this cracked mud on a riverbed look. Those geometric kind of cracks you get. So they called it crackle. He was trying to look at this, trying to work out where it was, and then realized in one place it seemed as if it was forming the shape of a letter. So he was like, oh my goodness, this is the ink. This is not showing up as a different color. It's not glowing bright or anything, but there is just this very, very subtle difference in the texture of the surface where the ink is sitting on the papyrus. And he was awarded the first ink prize for doing that. So then other competitors were able to use that to train their algorithms. Now they've got a foothold. They've got something to start training their algorithms in the difference between ink and not ink. Uh, Machine learning is about how to teach a statistical model to map your input data. Yes. If you give an AI model some small images, some patches of the image because the segments are really huge, it's like hundreds of thousands of pixels by hundreds of thousands of pixels. It's crazy resolution, so you take a small piece, you show it to the AI model, and the AI model needs to say, I see ink in this small piece, or not. And to train this, you need some examples to show it to begin with. So we tell it, okay, this is what ink looks like, this is what ink doesn't look like, and you show it these examples, and then it's about able to learn. That makes sense. You can't teach something how to look for something if you yourself can't look for it. Mm, so verifying with his own eyes, he's no expert in Greek, he doesn't know any Greek, so he was just looking at what makes sense as a writing. Like any kind of written language, you have some ink deposits and you draw a letter in some shape. It makes sense that the letters are all on a single row. It doesn't make sense that there's scrambled rows, fixed size columns, stuff like that. I go to sleep thinking about the Vesuvius challenge. I wake up, just check some stuff, continue working, eat, sleep, then repeat. I wasn't even getting proper sleep because I'm going to bed thinking, okay, did I actually try that thing? Yes, that's good. I like that. Just getting into your work. I love it. Uh, Immediately, papyrologists said, we think this is a new work we've never seen before because purple is quite a rare word. Purple, or porphyris, is the name of a dye. It was made from the sea snail, so very expensive, difficult to make, used to dye the emperor's robes. This was a sign of wealth, luxury, rank. It's just this lovely sort of evocative word. So that was the First Letters Prize, awarded in October to Luke Ferreter, who got the first place for that prize. Talking about who Ferreter is. When the whole challenge was set up in March 2023, they had this big 700,000 grand prize for reading the first passages from the scroll, and a deadline was set for that prize. December 31st, 2023. Okay. I just want to know what it says. Everybody's working together. They're all trying to get this. They're reading wrappings of mummies. Uh, okay, talking about the Vesuvius challenge. I'm not seeing. Um, where is it? Did I just scroll right past it? 5% of the entire scrolls. Really big, long scrolls, and it was discovered that this was a work of philosophy by an ancient Greek philosopher called Philo Philodemus. And that in itself was not a huge surprise because of the scrolls that had been attempts made to open them and partially read. A lot of these scrolls were written in Greek and were philosophy works by Philodemus. He was a follower of Epicurus, Epicurus, who founded the Epicurean school of Greek philosophy. They thought everything in nature was made of atoms that swerve and collide, and there's so many works of Epicurean philosophy that they think part of the library was probably the working library of this philosopher. Seems the work on pleasure and the senses and on what gives us pleasure, possibly relating to music. It's mentioning the color purple. It gives us pleasure. Okay, it's mentioned the taste of capers. There's a character called Xenophantus who is mentioned, um, a famous flute player. Apparently, his playing was so evocative and stirred the heart so much that his playing always caused Alexander the Great to immediately reach for his weapons. So, a lot of sensory sources of pleasure that are being mentioned in this piece. Cool. Okay. So, a lot was talked about, and just talking about philosophy and pleasure. Okay. Cool stuff. Long-winded to get there. Okay, moving on. 75,000-year-old female Neanderthal from cave where species buried their dead. A new documentary has recreated the face of a 75,000-year-old female Neanderthal whose flattened skull was discovered and rebuilt from hundreds of bone fragments by a team of archaeologists and conservators led by the University of Cambridge. The team excavated the Neanderthal in 2018 from inside a cave in Iraqi Kurdistan, where the species had repeatedly returned to lay their dead to rest. The cave was made famous by work in the late 1950s that unearthed several Neanderthals which appeared to have been buried in succession. What is fake ass picture? Secrets of the Neanderthals, produced by BBC Studios, is released on Netflix worldwide. Ooh, I wish I had Netflix. Maybe I can find it elsewhere. I don't know. The documentary follows the team led by the Universities of Cambridge and Liverpool as they return to Shanidar Cave to continue excavations. The skulls of Neanderthals and humans look very different, said Dr. Emma Pomeroy, a paleoanthropologist from Cambridge Department of Archaeology who features in the new film. Neanderthal skulls have huge brow ridges and lack chins, with a projecting midface that results in more prominent noses, but the recreated faces suggest these differences were not so stark in life. It's perhaps easier to see how interbreeding occurred between our species, to the extent that almost everyone alive today still has Neanderthal DNA. Neanderthals are thought to have died out around 40,000 years ago, and the discoveries of new remains are few and far between. The Neanderthal featured in the documentary is the first from the cave for over 50 years, and perhaps the best preserved individual to be found this century. While earlier finds were numbered, this one is called Shanidar Z, although researchers think it may be the top half of an individual excavated in 1960. The head had been crushed, possibly by rockfall, relatively soon after death, after the brain decomposed, but before the cranium filled with dirt, and then compacted further by tens of thousands of years of sediment. When archaeologists found it, the skull was flattened to around 2 centimeters thick. Oof. The team carefully exposed the remains, including an articulated skeleton almost to the waist, and used a glue-like consolidated to strengthen the bones and surrounding sediment. They removed Shanidar Z and dozens of small foil-wrapped blocks from under 7.5 meters of soil and rock within the heart of the cave. Dang! Under 7.5 meters. That's that's deep. In the Cambridge lab, I mean, I don't know. I'm usually digging a meter deep. In the Cambridge lab, researchers took micro-CT scans of each block before gradually diluting the glue and using the scans to guide extraction of bone fragments. Lead conservator Dr. Lucia Lopez pieced over 200 bits of skull together freehand to return it to its original shape, including upper and lower jaws. That is a puzzle I wish I could have helped with. Each skull fragment is gently cleaned while glue and consolidant are re-added to stabilize the bone, which can be very soft, similar in consistency to a biscuit dunked in tea. That's so British. What a British way to put it. Oh. It's like a high-stakes 3D jigsaw puzzle. A single block can take over a fortnight to process. The team even referred to forensic science studies on how bones shift after blunt force trauma and during decomposition. To help them understand if remains had been buried, the ways in which teeth had pinged from jawbones. The rebuilt skull was surface scanned and 3D printed, forming the basis of a reconstructed head created by world-leading paleo artists and identical twins Audrey and Alphonse Kennis, who built up layers of fabricated muscle and skin to reveal a face. New analysis strongly suggests that Shanidar Z was an older female, perhaps in her mid-40s according to researchers, significant age to reach so deep in prehistory. Without pelvic bones, the team relied on sequencing tooth enamel proteins to determine her sex. Teeth were also used to gauge her age through levels of wear and tear, with some front teeth worn down to the root. At around 5 feet tall, and with some of the smallest adult arm bones in Neanderthal fossil record, her physique also implies a female. While remnants of at least 10 separate Neanderthals have now come from the cave, Shenadar Z is the fifth to be found in a cluster of bodies buried at a similar time in the same location, right behind a huge vertical rock, over 2 meters tall at the time, which sits in the center of the cave. The rock had come down from the ceiling long before the bodies were interred. Researchers say it may have served as a landmark for Neanderthals to identify a particular site for repeated burials. Neanderthals have had a bad press ever since the first ones were found over 150 years ago. Our discoveries show that the Shanidar Neanderthals may have been thinking about death and its aftermath in ways not so very different from their closest evolutionary cousins, ourselves. The other 4 bodies in the cluster were discovered by archaeologist Ralph Solecki in 1960. One was surrounded by clumps of an ancient pollen. Solecki and pollen specialist Arlette Leroy-Guram argued the finds were evidence of funerary rituals where the deceased, not the diseased, I'm very sorry, deceased were laid to rest on a bed of flowers. This archaeological work was among the first to suggest Neanderthals were far more sophisticated than the primitive creatures many had assumed based on their stocky frames and ape-like brows. Decades later, the Cambridge-led team retraced Solecki's dig, aiming to use the latest techniques to retrieve more evidence for his continuous claims, as well as the environment and activities of the Neanderthals and later modern humans who lived there when they uncovered Shanidar Z. Shanidar Cave was used first by Neanderthals and then by our own species, so it provides an ideal laboratory to tackle one of the biggest questions of human evolution. Why did Neanderthals disappear from the stage around the same time as Homo sapiens spread over regions where Neanderthals had lived successfully for almost 500,000 years? A study led by Professor Chris Hunt of Liverpool John Moores University now suggests the pollen was left by bees burrowing into the cave floor. However, remains from Shanidar Cave still show signs of an empathetic species. For example, one male had a paralyzed arm, deafness, and had trauma that likely rendered him partially blind, yet had lived a long time, so must have been cared for. Site analysis suggests that Shanidar Z was laid to rest in a gully formed by running water that had been further hollowed out by hand to accommodate the body. Posture indicates that she had been laid against the side, with her left hand curled under her head and a rock behind the head like a small cushion. which may have been placed there. While Shanidar Z was buried within a similar time frame as other bodies in the cluster, researchers cannot say how contemporaneous they are, only that they all date to around 75,000 years ago. In fact, while filming on site for the new documentary in 2022, the team found remains of yet another individual in the same burial cluster, uncovering the left shoulder blades, some ribs, and a fairly complete right hand. In the sediments several feet above, another three Neanderthals dating to around 50,000 years had been found by Selecki, more of which have been recovered by the current team. Further research since Shanidar Z was found has detected microscopic traces of charred food in the soil around the older body cluster. These carbonized bits of wild seeds, nuts, and grasses suggest not only that Neanderthals prepared food, soaking and pounding pulses, and then cooked it, but did so in the presence of their dead. The body of Shanidar Z was within arm's reach of living individuals cooking with fire and eating. For these Neanderthals, there does not appear to be that clear separation between life and death. What if she died when they were making dinner? Like she was just like, I'm gonna go take a nap, laid down, and that's why her arm was underneath her. She was all comfortable, sleeping, and died while they were making dinner. We can see the Neanderthals are coming back to one particular spot to bury their dead. This could be decades or even thousands of years apart. Is it just a coincidence or is it intentional? And if so, what brings them back? It's a good cave. Why wouldn't you use a good cave? As an older female, Shanidar Z would have been a repository of knowledge for her group. And here we are 75,000 years later, learning from her still. Gotta make it poetic. Still cool. It's awesome. Hopefully more research comes out. All right, moving on. Oh, this was the... No, I don't want to accept all. Go away. Stop with my cookies. My cookies are for me. Cookies that help. No, off, off, off. Okay. Save. This one was about mice that I found interesting. I won't do this one today. I'll do this one next time. So they revised the dating of the Liujiang skeleton to renew understanding of human occupation of China. The emergence of Homo sapiens in Eastern Asia has long been a subject of intense research interests, with the scarcity of well-preserved and dated human fossils posing significant challenges. Ooh, Tongtianyan Cave, located in the Liujiang district of Liuzhou City, southern China, has been a focal point of this research, housing one of the most significant fossil finds of Homo sapiens. However, the age of the fossils found within has been a matter of debate until now. In a new international study in Nature Communications, with contributions by Griffith University, researchers have provided new age estimates and revised provenience information for the Liujiang human fossils, shedding light on the presence of Homo sapiens in the region. Using advanced dating techniques, including U-series dating on human fossils and radiocarbon and optically stimulated luminescence dating on fossil-bearing sediments, the study revealed new ages ranging from approximately 33,000 to 23,000 years ago. Previously, studies had reported ages of up to 227,000 years ago for the skeleton. There's a big difference there. These revised age estimates align with dates from other human fossils in northern China, suggesting a geographically widespread presence of H. sapiens across eastern Asia over 40,000 years ago. Dr. Junyi Jie of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and lead author of the study said this finding holds significant implications for understanding human dispersals and adaptations in the region. It challenges previous interpretations and provides insights into the occupation history of China. The Lujiang skeletal remains discovered in 1958 have long been considered among the most significant human fossils from Eastern Asia. With their excellent preservation, the cranial, dental, and postcranial remains have been the subjects of extensive biological and morphological comparisons across Eurasia. Dr. Qingfeng Xiao of the Nanjing Normal University added, the findings of this study overturn earlier age estimates and paleoanthropological interpretations, emphasizing the need for robust dating methods and proper provenience documentation in the study of human evolution. Very important. Do not just pick something up and move it. You've got to do so much testing. The study's comprehensive dating analysis highlights the importance of accurate age estimates in advancing our understanding of modern human origins and dispersals. Okay, it didn't say how they got the original date of 227,000 years ago, but their new one, uranium dating of the physical human remains, and then some radiocarbon dating and optically stimulated luminescence dating. So three different forms of dating to get the dates, which is a good way to do it. Instead of just relying on radiocarbon, which is what most people in the general public think that dating is occurring through radiocarbon. Radiocarbon is a great source, but it does have a limited time span to be able to use it. And it's, I think, I want to say it's like 35, 40,000 years, maybe it's 45,000 years that it starts to become less accurate because you're reading half-life, right? So really using it for anything earlier than that, just it starts to get a little wonky. So having these other types of dating techniques, not to, so if you can get radiocarbon, great, use it, but using other ones as well to back it up, it just produces more data and solidifies. Um, it's like having two friends say back you up on your idea, not just one. And then they also tested the sediments around, which is cool. Good stuff. Alright, moving on to the next one. More cookies! Tired of all the cookies, guys. Just go away. I don't want all the cookies. Temporal pattern of dental caries at the western flank of the central plateau of Iran, 2700 BCE and 1600 BC, or no, CE. Sorry. Dental caries are cavities. So, to analyze the overall frequency and intertooth patterns of caries in three populations from ancient cemeteries located along the western border of the central Iranian plateau as a means to explore whether the populations of Iran had greater access to fermentable sugars after the establishment of the great empires. Fermentable sugars. Dental collections from Kafarvid Varzane, Estark Jashakan, and Tape Pushchi. I'm very sorry, this definitely being butchered. So they used those three different site collections for the data. Frequencies of dental caries per tooth categories, location, and size of the carious lesions are analyzed using Smith's mean measure of divergence, correspondence analysis, and Kruskal-Wallis tests. So just specific ways of analyzing that data and how similar they are. There are minimal differences in overall frequencies of carious lesions at Iranian sites, regardless of the chronology, but notable differences at Syrian sites. The intertooth pattern at the Iron Age cemetery in East Ark appears distinctly different than the other Iranian sites in the comparative samples from Syria. Divergent substance strategies may be linked with different intertooth patterns since people buried at East Ark were mobile herders, while the other cemeteries were used by settled farmers. This comprehensive research on dental caries in three chronological diverse populations in Iran sheds light on the association between dental caries and subsistence strategies and introduces the Smith's mean measure of divergence to explore intertooth caries patterns. May prove useful to other researchers seeking to understand relationships between substance diet and the presence of carious lesions. Okay, so they were all pretty equal in their access to fermented sugars. That's what that says. Except for Syria. They weren't. Sad. Alright, one more, and then I'm done for the evening. Humans can increase biodiversity, archaeological study shows. Cultural diversity is likely to have an overall positive effect on the biodiversity of ecosystems. Whew, just throwing a lot at you, aren't they? Okay. The homogenization of human life forms may therefore be regarded as an important motor of the ongoing major extinction events in the age of humans, Anthropocene, which is actually still debated on whether it really is a different age or if we're still in the Holocene. Uh, Dr. Shuman T. Hussain from the University of Cologne and Dr. Chris Bowman from the University of Tübingen come to this conclusion in their recent article, The Human Side of Biodiversity, Coevolution of the Human Niche, Paleosynanthropy, and Ecosystem Complexity in the Deep Human Past. Fits into the current thematic focus, multi-species what? Okay. In their publication, the scientists examine the role of past humans in the evolution and control of biodiversity on our planet. Okay, archaeologists offer a deep time perspective grounded in material and ecological data to argue that the idea that humans have lived harmoniously with nature as hunter-gatherers mischaracterizes the fundamental problem of human interaction with ecosystems. The scientists also criticize that in the recent past, with regard to aforementioned extinction events, the so-called biodiversity loss in the Anthropocene, attempts have often been made to highlight that people have actively intervened in their ecosystem more than 10,000 years ago, notably with negative consequences. Is it only with negative, or is it just negative or easier to see? The researchers suggest that the relationships between human and ecosystem has always been much more complicated and complex, and that isn't that like saying it the same way? Complicated and complex. In addition to negative effects, there were also positive effects in biodiversity that follow certain rules. Oftentimes, it can even be said that biodiversity loss occurs locally due to human activity, but biodiversity is strongly promoted elsewhere. These dynamics must therefore be placed in a wider context. Research combines various case studies from the late Pleistocene, 120,000 to 11,000 years before present, and is also based on a recent study of the two authors on ravens from the Ice Age, which showed that these birds benefited from humans as neighbors about 30,000 years ago, especially from food options that hunter-gatherers in their environment provided for these animals. The archaeologists based their research on the results of zoo archaeological and stable isotope analysis, which were applied in the case of ravens, and used this and other already published contextual archaeological information to show that such processes can lead to an increase in biodiversity on a local level. This is because certain animals benefit from human influence, and others that are excluded locally by humans, such as larger predators, move to other areas. Overall, this increases the heterogeneity and complexity of such ecosystems, therefore, often resulting in a positive effect on overall biodiversity. Ultimately, we try to argue that biodiversity regimes can not be separated from human influence and that not all of these influences are merely negative. It also follows that increased diversity in human life forms probably has an overall positive effect on biodiversity as a whole, and that a decisive driver of the biodiversity crisis in the Anthropocene is in part also the homogenization of human life and nature and with it. So they're saying we need to live differently, like having different influences, not just one large area and everybody's living in a similar way, which we really don't. Like, even in the Western countries, we don't do that. People living in the country consume different foods, they interact with their environment very differently than those in a huge, like, metropolitan area or like a city like New York. The animal life in New York City is not the same as the animal life in my town. And honestly, I'm thankful for that because the size of the rats of the videos I've seen in New York are horrid. I don't want to see those rats in my life. They seem mean. It'd be like uh, didn't there's like giant rats in a movie, a kids movie. Is it Never Ending Story that they're like all ravenous and mean and angry and ugly, ugly things. I think it's Never Ending Story. Can't remember. I always fell asleep during that movie. No, it wasn't Never Ending Story. It was Princess Bride, right? Yeah, I think it was Princess Bride. Anyways, tangent over. I hope you guys enjoyed the quick little few articles I had. Um, I will try to stream again next Thursday. Um, I tried last week, but it just didn't happen. I have a lot of stuff going on right now, traveling with work and then trying to move. Yes, I am moving again, so it'll be fun packing your entire life up again and then unpacking it again. I couldn't tell you how many times I've moved in my lifetime, but a lot. And then with traveling, it just makes it a little harder. But try I wanted to stream last week, couldn't get it, and then this week I knew I was traveling, so I brought my mic because I tried 2 weeks ago or something to stream, and I couldn't because the mic on my laptop is crap. So I brought my like microphone setup from home, and I think it's worked out decently for you guys. I'll probably just have to make it part of my regular packing for field work. And yeah, I wanted it in my carry-on, but then the airline was like, no, you got to check that. We don't have enough space. And of course, I'm never in like one of the more priority groups. It is what it is, right? So I will see you guys next week with a whole new fresh batch of articles to go over. I hope you guys have a wonderful end of your week. And yeah, join me next Thursday. Follow me on Twitter and Discord. I post every article that I go through, so if you want to do any more research later on, you can. Have a great evening, everybody. Make an ancient history series? Ancient, is that, what do you mean by ancient history series? Are you talking about the like docu-series I was going over with Hancock? Well, not with him, on him. Or are you wanting me to like go instead of just doing articles, actually do like a presentation on a specific ancient city or something? A full-length lecture series. You know, I could look into that and see about doing something. I had in the past done a series for Halloween where I covered different burial practices. I could do any type of thing series. I can look into doing some type of because for me my specialty has to do with um, the physical remains, skeleton, diet, uh, hominin species. So I tend to stick around that. If I do a series, I could look into something similar. There's a lot to do with food. Yeah, I can definitely look into doing that, Founder Soy. I will let you guys know. In the meantime, have a wonderful weekend and take care.